Okay, good morning, and this is Thursday, the 14th, halfway through the month of October, getting closer to Halloween, being wonderful. All right, we have 3 modules this 2 weeks. I think we did a pretty good job of discussing the issues in Mod 31. But do any of you have any questions based on your review of the questions? Okay. What do you think? Got any issues with Mod 35? We did start answering some questions, didn't we? Yes? No? No? Well, it starts off pretty simple. The first 2 have to do with social psychology, sort of orienting you to the subject matter of 35, 36, and 37. Number 4 is a big issue in understanding what Mod 35 is about. The mental process people use to explain their behavior and the behavior of others is called attribution. That's what this chapter or this mod is about, attribution and attribution theory, which leads us to attribution errors, which we, especially in our society, in the Western culture, make these attribution errors all the time. You have 2 choices when it comes to attribution. You can have dispositional, which is inner focus, more on like personality. And then you can have situational. Attribution, which is more of a social or circumstances, situation, I guess the word they use, situational. Well, it is situational, that's repetitive. Let's call it outer oriented. Or as they say in Central Illinois, orientated. No such word as orientated. Don't embarrass yourself and ever repeat that in public. It's oriented. For some reason, I think Spanish people who have English as a second language don't make that mistake. They didn't learn it wrong the first time when they were learning English. I don't know. I think Spanish speakers don't make that mistake. So good for you. Fritz Heider in number 5. He is the one who came up with this attribution theory. And the answer to that question, of course, is D, dispositions or their situation. So you can have an attribution that's dispositional, or you can have an attribution that is situational. Disposition means it's the way you are. not you personally, but the people you were judging. If somebody does something and you say, I wonder why they did that, you're either going to attribute it to dispositional, which means it's part of their personality, it's just the way they act. Or you can call it situational, and you say, oh, I know why that guy cut in front of me. He's probably got some kind of emergency going on. Maybe he's going to the hospital, maybe he's going to pick up his sick kid at school or something. That would be a situational story. And that's what this whole mod is about. And 36 is sort of in that same vein. So as we look at answers, page 2, there. By the way, do you have question 6 on your study guide? Well, my night class didn't have either, so somehow I got more questions on mine than you got on yours. I don't know how that happened, but that's okay. Question 13 is the first one I see that talks about the fundamental attribution error, refers to our tendency to underestimate the impact of the environment, the social, or as we say in social psychology, the situational influences, and to overestimate the impact of personal dispositions. So that's more of the dispositional. So and this is Western culture. I don't recall whether I covered this on Tuesday or not, but you have to understand the culture of what we're talking about. The Western Hemisphere, whether it's Mexico, United States, or Canada, especially in the United States, we are looked upon as rugged individuals. We do things the way we want to. We cut a path for our education, for who we're going to date, who we're going to marry, how we're going to define our morality. It's all about us. And you would think, well, yeah, it's your life. Why not drive it? Well, not all cultures do that. We are an individualistic culture. Other cultures, especially Eastern cultures, are more community-based. Well, actually, I know we had a discussion because I asked the person who sat behind you what his major was, and he told me he was a culinary major. And I asked him who made that influence on you, and he said it was just me. It wasn't his parents, it wasn't his primo or somebody. He just decided that's what he wants to study. And I used the example of the Catholic nun that I had as a student from Juarez, and the order that she belongs to over there. And she was a nursing student because although she committed her life to her religion and to help the church in that quest, because of her commitment to her order, she volunteered to be the one person in that order that was willing to go back to school and pick up a nursing degree, because since they take care of their own, she wanted to be in a position where she could medically assist the older nuns who were no longer working and had medical care issues that it takes more than just a general knowledge to take care of. So number 15 bothers me quite a bit as an instructor, because we as instructors, just like anybody else, can make an error in judgment and think somebody, as in this case, the answer is he is unmotivated to do well in school. That may be true, but it also may not be true. Maybe he's a student or she's a student who works at night because the family needs income, so they go to school in the daytime, work till late in the night, and they don't get enough sleep, and they come to class and their head's a little bit cloudy, and it's not that they're unmotivated, it's they've got too many irons in the fire, and they can't successfully negotiate all the needs that they have. Number 18, the tendency in Western cultures to attribute the behavior of others to internal personal characteristics while ignoring or underestimating the effects of external situational factors is called the fundamental attribution error. So if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you say immediately to yourself, that guy is just a-hole. That's why he pulled in front of me, egotistical, thinks arrogant, disrespectful, whatever word you want to put in there that's negative. You're talking about that guy's personality. You're not saying, like maybe if you were a member of a collectivist society like Japan or China, you might say, man, that guy's got some kind of emergency going on. Drive that fast and cut me off. He's got to get somewhere in a hurry. He probably has something going on in his life that forced him to do that. Unlikely we would say that. We would go with option 1 before we went with option 2. And then, of course, number 19 reinforces kind of a cultural stereotype that compared with people from East Asian cultures like India, Malaysia, Philippines, Japan, or China, they don't commit the fundamental attribution error at the level that we do. And you can understand why. Because we say to ourselves, if you were in a crappy situation, you probably created it. You're the one who decided to date that idiot and make him your boyfriend, you know, and now he sucks, and now you hate the situation. It's your fault. Nobody's going to say, oh, I understand why you started dating this guy. You were under a lot of pressure. You have a lot of self-doubt. This guy was enamored with you, and you needed some psychological support, so you got involved with this guy, and then he turns out to be unpleasant, maybe abusive or something like that. No, they're just going to say, you don't know how to choose the right mate, and it's your fault because it's a deficiency in your personality. It's not, you're under such stress and duress that you can't make a good decision. Okay, number 22 is, of course, very interesting to those of us who are instructors and those of you who are students. Good old Emma says, oh, she flunked her last psychology exam score. Why do you think that happened? Well, Professor Neal's kind of rambling. I don't really understand what he's talking about half the time. When I got to taking the test, it was unfair. You're not going to hear a student say, you know what? I didn't pay enough attention to this class. I blew it off. Most of the time I didn't even attend class. I don't watch the videos online of the sessions. I don't really fill out the study guide. So it's really my fault. I had too much going on. Every once in a while I'll get an email from a student telling me that. They'll say, I'm sorry I haven't been to class. My work is making me work double shifts and blah, blah, blah. So they'll explain why they haven't taken a test or why they haven't showed up to class. So they'll own up to it. But in general, people don't want to own up to it. They want to look at it as a situational matter and not a dispositional matter. Because if it's dispositional, then you're responsible for it. And when you look at other people, That's what you say about them. They're responsible for it. Oh, my boyfriend got in a car accident. Well, it's no surprise. Look at the way he drives. Look at his arrogance. Look at, his attitude. Well, it might not have been that. It might have been because of the situation. But we don't give them any slack. Now, I think this is a pretty interesting question. 28. Observing yourself on video replay is most likely to increase your tendency to attribute your behavior to your personality traits, which of course is on the dispositional side, your personality. That is pretty interesting. That is very interesting. I don't know, I've never really thought about it. I have seen myself on video quite a bit. I can tell you it helps to see yourself on video. It can be painful to see yourself on video, but it is very helpful. When I was, I think in 8th grade, which was what, when you were about 14, I ended up taking this speech class, which I did not want to take. It was an elective. But in the school that I was in good old Clovis, New Mexico, they just didn't have a lot of options. Once about 30 students sign up for a class, that's it. So if you wanted to take a class like art, which is fun, drawing, sculpting, and all that kind of stuff, you can't get into it because people ahead of you signed up for it and now it's locked up. So I was looking at my options and there was nothing good to take. So I chose the lesser of evils, I thought, and I ended up taking a speech class, which I thought I would regret because I knew what was going to happen. You go take a speech class, what do you think you're going to do in class? You're going to give speeches. You're going to read about different types of speeches, short little persuasive speeches, informative speeches, longer speeches, and that's what you have to do. And when you first start out doing that, it can be very intimidating. Being a trial attorney, I can tell you, one of the things that people are the most fearful of when they do nationwide surveys, in the top 5, there's always the fear of public speaking. Well, let's look at this. Anybody in here like standing in front of class or giving a speech in front of others? Sometimes people do, but most of the time it's like you. Nobody raises their hand. They're just not into it. Why? Because it can be embarrassing. You're standing up in front of somebody and then you breathe, you have a brain fart like I do half the time, and you can't find the right word or you stumble over something because you're nervous or whatever. So, like anything, the more you practice, the better you get at it. And so, obviously, that semester that I took that speech class, I had to do, 20, 30 speeches or something, maybe more. And I worked through that anxiety of doing it. I'll tell you another thing I learned, which, quite frankly, shocked me. When I used to work for the legislature in the state of Illinois when I was living there. After I left New Mexico, I did a year in Georgia, and then the rest of the time I did in Illinois. So I moved back to Albuquerque, New Mexico, after I graduated from law school. So, which was 92. So I've been back in New Mexico since 92. Now I live obviously here. It's not much different than New Mexico. Anyway, one thing I learned is, of course, if you're a politician, You're giving speeches all the time. You're trying to raise money. You're trying to influence people in their votes to vote for you, to support you on your support of some bill or something. And as a Senate staffer, I had to go when the Senate was not in session. We had to go out into the field to be with our respective senators in their district. So we used to go to their district, spend a night in the hotel or something, and go to a rally and help support them and all this kind of crap. My point is, or when the Senate was in session, you had to be on the Senate floor if one of your bills was going to come up, because part of your job was to consult with the senator if they have a question about their own bill or a question about somebody else's bill. So my point is, I got a lot of opportunity to see people speak. So this is what I saw. Most of the time, of course, they're behind a podium like this. You know, and they're giving their speech, and they're looking in people's eyes, which they're taught to do. They have their hands up here, they gesture with their hands, and they look very comfortable. Smooth talking, not an issue. And I'm sitting over here behind it in case they have a question. And I watch their hands on the podium, and their hands are going like this. And when they turn, like they're reading a speech, can't really see it because of that TV monitor. But when they turn the page, they're like, there's no voice, it's really, and their hands are going, what a disconnect. They look like they're completely calm, but yet their hands are shaking like a leaf. So, and they're very accomplished speakers, but they haven't overcome that feeling of screwing up. You know, what our current president does is somebody says something, the deal, and they reach from the teleprompter, and they leaves. Mr. President! It's because he can't handle it. He can't handle open dialogue with reporters because, frankly, he's in cognitive decline. He just doesn't want to admit it. But he does. I mean, those of us who are over 55, you know, we have some good days. Sometimes we have some bad days. But I haven't seen any good days from our president when it comes to spontaneous speaking. And that's usually, like I say, a high point to a politician, especially somebody like him who's been a politician for like 40 years, would think he would be excellent. He used to be fairly good at it, not anymore. 34, attitudes are belief-based feelings that guide behavior. Where do you get your beliefs? You get your beliefs from experience. Kind of back to our old friend Bo Lotto, who told us, how do you learn to see? By learning how to see. To see it, to experience the process of seeing. And it's no different than the other four senses. So, belief-based is a cognitive process, top-down processing, if you remember that term from the prior lecture. It is you applying your thinking patterns, your schemas that has developed over the time based on experience. So if your attitude says, let's say you're a conservative Republican, or the person you're looking at is a conservative Republican, you might have the attitude that they are anti-immigrant and anti-immigration because they're a conservative Republican. Well, what's that based on? It's based on your experience and what people say in the news, and just look at the difference between Trump and Biden when it comes to the border. Trump clamped it down, wants to build a wall, and Biden says, come on in, and they're doing it by the hundreds of thousands. We've already, this is what, October 10th month, we've already allowed about 1.5 million people across the border. 400,000 they expect to cross the border this month, the highest ever. I mean, 200,000 was bad. Now we're looking at 400,000. And now they, since they have satellites and they have ways of knowing what's coming, we have somewhere between 60 and 90,000 patients who are making their way up from Central America through Mexico, and they're going to hit the border. And you thought 14,000 was bad or 15,000 was bad, and the Haitians were all under the bridge at Del Rio, and that was bad. Bad optics for the Biden administration. What are we going to do with another 60 to 90,000 who bum rush, literally bum rush the border because they know Border Patrol can't handle an influx? Now remember, Border Patrol was designed to stop generally adult males coming over the border seeking economic opportunities. The Border Patrol was not designed to deal with 15,000 patients or 15,000 Colombians or whoever they are all at one time. It's just not, we don't have facilities, we don't have enough staff, it's just not built to do that. And of course, the coyotes and the drug cartels, they know how it works. So they get all these people running in one particular place at Del Rio because they learned that the drug cartels were not charging people a premium to get to the border because they wanted to funnel them in Del Rio, which they did, and it worked very effectively. And what happened? All the available Border Patrol agents in that region, that sector over there on our east side of Texas, were there in Del Rio. Meanwhile, the drug runners are running drugs and human smugglers other parts of the border because there's no Border Patrol there to stop it. So the number of what they call getaways, gotaways, those people, they know that they're there because they have cameras, they have drones, they also have motion detectors at the border. They know people are coming, but they don't know who they are. They don't have time to go there and find out. They're too tied up processing people in Del Rio. All right. Then we have this concept about how to persuade people. Question 40 says, compared with central root persuasion, central root persuasion is right to your face. Let's see if we have a definition in there somewhere. Could be. I'm not seeing it. Anyway, central root has to deal with just like the word sounds. It is, okay, I want you guys to understand why it's important to be vaccinated against COVID. And I'm going to tell you the reasons why. That's central root. Peripheral root is like the peripheral. It's not going directly into your face with what I'm trying to convince you. It's sort of dancing around the issue. And either one can be very persuasive. You already know that you can be unconsciously persuaded to do things or to value or disvalue something, like the example I gave you with buying an iPhone or the latest Galaxy. If I show you a picture of a severed dog's head with maggots and blood all over the place, you can't consciously see it because there's only a few slides in the entire video, but your mind still picks it up and it does influence you. So that's what peripheral root persuasion does. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, what about this foot in the door thing? Where do those questions pop in? That's just it's a technique. Here we go. Here we go. 50. The foot in the door phenomenon refers to the tendency to do what? C. Comply with a large request if one has been previously complied with a small request. This is sometimes said or compared, analogized with boiling a frog. Anybody ever heard that analogy? That's like boiling a frog. Well, this is a fact. May seem odd to you. Let's say you want to boil a frog because you're going to eat him, all right? If you boil the water, take the frog and drop him in the boiling water, the frog is going to go crazy. He's going to jump, crawl up the wall, he's going to fret, his life's in danger, and he's going to fight for his life. However, if you put him in a pot of water on the stove and you turn the fire up on it and it slowly heats up, the water gets hotter and hotter and hotter over a period of time, and the frog doesn't notice it. And then eventually, the water gets so hot, the frog is incapacitated and can't jump out, and then, of course, he's boiled alive. So the idea is, with the foot in the door, it's more of an analogy about like traveling salesmen, which we don't seem to have much of anymore. People who come to your door representing some company like Avon Beauty Products, or you've never heard of this one, Fuller Brushes, Fuller Brushman. They used to have their little suitcase filled with samples and come around and say, you need this kind of brush to clean, or this kind of brush to do this. And, the idea of the foot in the door is you want to get inside the person's house, because if you get inside the person's house, they're not immediately going to kick you out because you're trying to sell them something. They're going to listen to your spiel. What's going on today with door-to-door is solar panel salespeople who will come to your house, knock on the door. Hi, I'm Sarah. This is Billy, and we represent Sunshine Solar System, and we want to tell you how you can. Would you be interested in lowering your electric bill by a minimum of $120 a month? What? So if they can get you to listen to them and allow you inside, then you can sell them. You have a greater chance of selling them on your product. One of the last times I flew, I think I was coming back from a forensic psychology conference in California, and the guy next to me and the guy in the next row were both salespeople. And as we were chit-chatting, they found out they were both salesmen. Now, what really blew me away is the guy sitting next to me was a PhD psychologist. He taught, he saw patients, and then he said he explained, look, as an instructor, I'm making all this money for my school. I'm getting paid my salary, but my effort is not rewarded anything more because of my wonderful lecture style and whatever. Instead of having classes with only 20 students in, my classes have 40 in it, because the word gets around that I'm this dynamic psychology instructor, and so students come. Okay? My reward for that is Nothing, because I get paid the same whether 20 come in or 40 come in. And so I decided that's crap. I should get paid more when I work harder and the results are measurable. So I got into sales. And I don't remember whether it was him or the other guy. I think it was him. And his sales was exactly what I just said, solar energy panels. And he got up into the chain. So he started out selling, and now he's a manager of 12 people who sell solar panels, which he gets a cut on every sales contract that they get signed. He gets a percentage of that. So now he's making well into six figures. And I thought, isn't that strange? Well, he can use his doctorate in psychology to understand sales and to understand people and understand foot in the door, what you should say. And that's what they were talking about between the two of them. Yeah, once you get inside the house, you go in the living room and you look around at pictures, family pictures, and you work that into your conversation. Oh, is this your husband? Are these your two kids? Yeah. Oh, I bet they appreciate this. And, oh, you've got a 16-year-old daughter? Oh, I bet she's in the bathroom all the time doing her hair and running electric bill up. They make it personalized for you, or at least seem personalized to you. They care about you. They're talking about your daughter. They're talking about your husband or your wife. And so that allows them to build up some kind of temporary relationship with you and then lay the big bomb on you. If you just give us $60 a month, you will get your own solar panels and you will immediately be seeing results and blah, blah, blah. So that's put in the door. It's just a phenomenon, okay? There's about 8 questions on foot in the door. Seems to be really popular here. 55 is an important concept. The set of prescribed behaviors associated with a particular social position is called a role. This is what social psychology spends a lot of time discussing and researching. What do you do because of your role? And that leads us to this video that's about to get queued up here called the Stanford Prison Project, run by Philip Zimbardo, who used to teach at the famous Stanford University in the psychology program. And I have to say, Stanford psychology program is probably the highest rated psychology program in the nation. Remember Dr. Steele, who was talking about stereotype threat. He was a Stanford University professor, and so was Phil Zimbardo. Zimbardo got this idea. Well, let me take one step back. There's a guy called Stanley Milgram, who was a Yale professor. Stanley Milgram was a German Jewish descent that his parents lived through the Holocaust. He was a child during the Holocaust, but he does have some memories of the Holocaust. And when he got to be teaching at Yale, he always wondered how German people, who he knew, he loved, his parents were German, relatives, and he knew them to be a decent group of people. And as a nation, they were as decent as any other nation, except it's the only nation on earth that committed themselves to Nazism and trying to wipe out an entire culture within Germany. And it wasn't just the Jews that they were killing. They were killing LGBTQ plus people when that term didn't even exist. They killed gypsies because they were bohemian and they lived their own lifestyle and never could deal with that. So he just killed them. And the question is, how could all those hundreds of thousands of good German people end up doing such gross, inhumane things like burning people in ovens, and gassing them, and digging big trenches and throwing hundreds of thousands of dead bodies, covering them up with dirt, all that stuff? How could they do that? Experiments on people that's so horrid it would make you want to puke if you read about it. So he designed this experiment, which I'll have to put up a video on if you're interested in watching it. And basically, he created a box that looked like it was a shock box, starting from like 0 volts to 400. And they had little switches all the way up. And he told the participants that this was a learning research designed to help people with their memory so they could do better in school, which is all crap, all a lie. What it was doing was trying to find out how far you would go with an experiment that you thought was shocking the living hell out of somebody for the giving the wrong answer. So that's what he did. He had an actor on a reel-to-reel tape. They taped from the very beginning and the questions, and then to maybe 3/4 of the shock, where the guy finally says, "I can't take it anymore. I'm not answering any more of your questions. I'm not participating with this." And so he no longer responds. So the guy who's shocking him, who up to now the guy would be going, the student would be going, "Ah!" when he was hitting the shock button, right? Well, of course he wasn't being shocked, but the guy didn't know that because the learner was in a different room behind the wall, and the teacher could only hear what was going on. They couldn't see what was going on. So when they started this experiment, which was not directed at students, it was directed at adults in New Haven, Connecticut, where Yale is located, and nobody could have predicted the result, including Milgram. The result was an incredible amount of people went all the way to the very end. So they were literally shocked, in their mind, shocking a person behind the wall who might be dead because he's complaining, "My heart's bothering me. I have a heart condition and my heart's bothering me. So let's stop." And then a teacher would look at a guy in the back of the room with a little lab coat on and a little clipboard there taking notes, and they would say, "What am I supposed to do? The guy's screaming, says he's got a heart problem. He could be dead, he could be hurting." The guy in the back would say, "The job is to complete the task." Of course, you got a big dollar amount, like $50. That was a long time ago, 1955. And so there are clips where the guy would say, "I can't take responsibility for this. This guy might be dead now. He might be unconscious." And then the guy in the back would say, "I'll take responsibility for it." Meaning me, the guy working for Yale University, not Stanley Milgram, but another person, I'll take responsibility. As soon as he said, "I will take responsibility," then the teacher doing that, read the list and repeat, even though the guy's not even answering, he thought, "All right, it's not my problem. If something goes wrong here, this guy dies, it's his problem. It's his fault." He told me to go ahead with the experiment, which of course is exactly what the Germans said at the Nuremberg trial. I was following orders. If I didn't follow orders, they would have killed me, which is true. Wasn't my idea to put these people in an oven. Wasn't my idea to put them in a shower and then gas them to death. I was following orders, which of course is a touchy situation. Being in the military, following orders. I was in the military 26 years. And the rationale in the military is you're supposed to follow orders because that's what requires you to be successful in your job. If your senior officer tells you, okay, man, we're getting together, we're going to move out, and that building over there, we're going to take that building by force. You can't have people in your squad or platoon going, hey, Sergeant, I think that's a bad idea, man. Those guys are embedded in that building. They got sandbags and machine guns. We're going to get the crap shot out of us. You can't have that kind of dialogue in the middle of a war. You have to do what you're told to do or people will die. And you have to pray to God that the person who's leading you has some sense about how to accomplish the mission without getting you all killed. None of you were alive during the Vietnam War, but it was a big case with a guy named Lieutenant Calley. Lieutenant Calley in the Vietnam War was leading a platoon that came upon a village, and he told all the guys, kill everything that moves in that village, and then we're going to burn it to the ground. And the people were like, well, there's women, children, and there are old people. What? You heard what I said? I'm giving the orders, you're following them, murder everything that moves in that village. So they did, which included women and children and old people. And then it became public that he gave those orders. So what did the U.S. Army do? They prosecuted him under UCMJ, and they did not prosecute any of his people under him. But the rule is you're supposed to follow any lawful order. So, can they give you a lawful order to gang up and go attack that building over there? Is that a lawful order? Maybe. What about wiping everything out in the village indiscriminately? Well, that's not so lawful. I mean, these women, old people, children, they're not a threat to you. Tough situation. So we are defined by our situational facts. So when somebody like Phil Zimbardo, Dr. Zimbardo says, okay, we got 12 guys here, you 6 are prisoners, you 6 are corrections officer, okay, you guys, we're going to send you home, which is what they did. You 6 over here, we're going to send you home, and you're going to be the prisoners, and eventually you'll be brought into the prison, which he built in the basement of the psychology building at Stanford University. Well, when the guys who signed up for this, because it was a paid position, it wasn't paying a lot, but it was during summer and they weren't doing anything else, so they decided to make a little money. So the people running the joint, which was Zimbardo and other people, he didn't tell the future prisoners what they had to do other than go home and wait and things will unfold. Then he took the corrections officers and put them in a room and said, okay, look, this is what it is. You're going to wear these clothes, which were kind of correction officer looking khaki and all this stuff. And you can't hit these people. You cannot be physically aggressive to them. But you can direct them to do things. You are in charge. It's your responsibility to run this prison 24/7, 3 shifts. And they did. They fit the role. They did not explain exactly how you get people to comply. But people were creative. They watched TV. They've seen movies. So they started doing things like people do in the military. Oh, you want to listen to me? Get out and give me 20 push-ups. What happens if they say no? Go screw yourself. Let's go, Brandon, you know? What do? Well, we have the solitary cell, which used to be the room closet with a lock. So one guy who was not following directions, they forcefully put him in the broom closet, locked it the so in solitary confinement. And then he started not doing what he was already doing, not doing what they wanted him to do. So then he wouldn't eat, and they went on a hunger strike, things that real prisoners do. And then it's just an act. It got so bad, this was scheduled to go on for 14 days. And Zimbardo was just elated that it was working so well. The guards were acting like guards, the prisoners were acting like prisoners, and they didn't have a script. The guards had a very limited script, but they were going well beyond it. So he was so excited, he invited the other psychology professors over to see his ongoing experiment. He was single at the time, on the prowl, and he was enamored with a female psychology professor at Stanford. And as I told you, Stanford is a very highly rated school in psychology. So she obviously was really smart and was a standout. Otherwise, she wouldn't be teaching at Stanford. And so Zimbardo almost broke his arm trying to pat himself on the back about what a great job he was doing on this social experiment of watching what the prisoners were doing and the corrections officers. And then she said to him, "Bill, you're abusing these young men. This is child abuse, human abuse. This is not acceptable scientific research. You are messing with these kids' minds, and I can't believe you're stupid enough to be doing this." And so he thought he was going to really impress this hot chick. And she, of course, was smarter than him and put him in his place. So the next day, he thought about it overnight, and the next day, he, come on, really? Kick me out? Absolutely incorrect. Okay. So she said, "I'm not having anything to do with this. I think you're an idiot." And so the next morning, he got up and said, "You know what? She's right. I quit." He went in and pulled off the experiment. Now, this was embarrassing to himself and very embarrassing to Stanford. And his research and Stanley Milgram's research led to something called institutional review boards, IRBs. So now every college in the nation, college or university in the nation that conducts research has to go through an IRB. And the IRB is made up of multidisciplinary people. So if you're a psych professor proposing to do some kind of research, you have to run your research idea through the IRB and get permission. And if they don't give you permission, you can't do the experiment. Even if somebody has paid you in the school $500,000 to conduct this research, if the IRB says no, then it's no. Why? Because two of the worst examples of abusing people were done by psychologists who should know better. Of everybody on the faculty, the psych faculty should be the smartest and most in tune with what's good and what's bad. But we get to be little bit megalomaniacs. We think we're smarter than the rest of the world, so we want to do this experiment. So I'm going to show you just a little bit of this video. I don't take the morning to do it. See how old this is by the age of that top car. Somebody say something. I can't hear the thing. Really? That's pause. They had no idea that the real cops were coming with real cop cars and handcuffs, knock on the door. Are you Billy Jones? Yeah. Boom. So their neighbors, their roommates are like freaking out. Of course, somebody's filming it because you can see somebody's filming it. They took them to jail, real jail, patted them down, booked them, took their fingerprints and all that stuff. Then they put them back in the police car and took them to Stanford University, and then they went to jail. And the corrections officers who were ready for them, the students, they started doing weird things. Like they got cloth bags, and they would put them over their head. So they were walking around not disoriented because they thought, this would be cool, disorient the prisoners so they don't know who they're dealing with, where they're going, and they deloused them, made them get naked and sprayed them with some Lysol. And I mean, it's bizarre stuff that Zimbardo never said a word about. These guys just on their own thought, well, we're in charge. They could have lice, so let's spray them down. And they started getting into the role and acting like that. Let's go. So he's given the rules to the CO, but they're not very specific. There's some things you can't do, like I said, you can't hit them, beat them, but you can do a lot of other things. There, whoops, there they are. One of the first things they do is they take away your name. They give you a number, and they don't refer to you by your name. They refer to you by a number. Why is that important? Because it depersonalizes you. And you, the CO, you're not asking David to do something. You're asking prisoner 0512 to do something. So you're further away, depersonalized in what you're doing. We do this in the military before you get deployed to go overseas. They'll put you in a theater setting or something, and they'll show you war films of U.S. military members decapitated or tortured bodies, and with let's say it was the Iraqi war with Iraqi ISIS or Al Qaeda or whoever else, Taliban soldiers with big smiles on their face, with some U.S. soldier all shot up. To give you the message. Guess what, guys? Your enemy are animals. They're not even human beings. They shouldn't even exist on Earth. They're so nasty. So when you go over there in country and you start fighting these guys, as Elliot Rogers says, you never showed me any mercy, so I'm not going to show you any mercy. And that we get soldiers the mindset that you are fighting for the greatest cause on earth, which is American freedom and liberty, and you're going over to a foreign country to wipe out the enemies of that country. So you depersonalize. Don't call people by their name. And you punish people if they refer to a member of the prisoner group as their real name. These are real, obviously, these are real videos. Look at the eyes on that guy.
Take their sons home. Then, after reception, Susie goes. The institution has paid its darkness. Remember its severity. I just shut up. But they do so they can mindless work, moving boxes back.
No, these are all. There's a guy doing push-ups. There's a bag over the head. If any of you have remember back from the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq that the Americans took over and were running, we had prisoners like that stripped, completely naked, bags over their head. A lot of Arabic people do not like animals. They do not like dogs. And so we knew that. And of course, we use dogs in law enforcement in the military. So they were for sure to have canine dogs in the prison to scare the living crap out of these prisoners, which they did. And they demoralized them. They have some odd ways of looking at sexual behavior in men and women. No surprise to probably any of you that they're very, very restricted about the roles of men and women. And they are very religiously offended and moralistically offended if women are involved with them in their body at all. So our corrections officers were exploiting that. There was a little short female sergeant in the military, and she was running around barking orders to these guys and making them form human pyramids and simulate sexual acts, homosexual acts with each other, all to degrade them, demoralize them, because that one specific cell of that whole prison, it was only done on, I think it was tier 3, was the only group of corrections officers who were treating the detainees like this. And they say they were doing it because they were getting results, and all the alphabet guys, the CIA, the NSA, a bunch of other people that run spook organizations within the military, they were getting results. And so they did more of it. Now, like I said, in this deal, they didn't hit anybody, thankfully. They had nightsticks. Somebody decided it was very intimidating. I think they watched the movie Cool Hand Luke, where Paul Newman was Luke in the prison, and he goes through all this stuff. And the guy who was the violent, like captain of the guards in that movie, wore mirrored sunglasses. And he'd always get into somebody's face and go, "What are you doing, boy? You're not listening to me." And the idea was they have mirrored sunglasses, so you really don't get to see the eyes of the guy. And that's intimidating, because we can tell a lot by looking at people's eyes. If you don't believe me, how good are you at assessing somebody's attitude now that people wear masks and the only thing you can see is their eyes, you can get a little bit more perceptive than you were before we were wearing masks. And then here's Zimbardo going through the discussion. This guy was prisoner 416. 418, I can't read that. 416. He was the one that was doing all the time in solitary. He was a rebel. And he paid for it. And maybe if I'm lucky, I'll show you a guy. I'm trying to see yet. Ah, there he is. This guy. This guy was known as John Wayne because he became like a self-appointed leader of the group, and he did all sorts of stuff. He is a psychology major, graduated with a PhD, and I have a video of him talking like when he's in his 50s, talking about what he did. And I'm telling you, the psychologist, it's sick. Because the guy's asking, you remember when you did this and you did this? Watch his face. Yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah. You say, you freaking moron, you got a PhD in psychology, you abuse these prisoners, and now you're an adult, you've had 30 years to think about it, and when you do think about it, yeah, we did a great job. It's like, he should be saying, man, I got sucked into this situational role playing, and I violated my own personal values, like people in the Milgram. After the Milgram experience, they brought the student from behind the wall to meet the teacher. And the teacher's like, oh my God, you're alive. He goes, yeah, I was never getting shocked. It's all on the tape. It's just BS. We're just doing it. So there's this great sense of relief that the guy hasn't been shocking the hell out of a fellow human being. But that wasn't enough, because once they left, they had a little bit of PTSD based on the fact that they didn't know they weren't shocking somebody. They thought they were shocking somebody, and now they know that there was no limit to what they were doing. They're embarrassed, personally injured, embarrassed. Now, here. Let's see what else I put. Forget you. Play it with DLC. I think this is a good one. No, never mind. On Blackboard, you already have one Zimbardo. If you're personally interested, I'll post another one or two and you can review it. Now, that's the time we have left. Hopefully you've had some time to look at Mod 36. I don't believe, in my humble opinion, that Mod 36 is very difficult. The questions and answers are pretty straightforward. There's a couple of terms you should know that are defined, like prejudice in number 2, and 7, which is a stereotype. Prejudice and discrimination in number 11. So, as with anything, the best way to be successful on these questions is read the mod while you have read the mod in the book while you have the study guide in your hand. And once you learn what they're looking for, the magic words like stereotype, like prejudice, like hindsight bias, discrimination, stereotyping, then you can just rip through these questions because they're all kind of repetitive. There's nothing really new. They're just giving you different sides of prejudice. Here's a question. Which of the following has been found to be true of fatigue? D, it is associated with all these things. It reduces conscious control. It increases automatic reactions. It increases racial bias in decisions to shoot. So, really all you need to do is understand these basic definitional stuff, and you're good to go. In-group bias versus out-of-group bias. You saw the Ash line video on Tuesday where a group of people or Confederates working with the instructor, and they say a line is the matching line, but it's clearly not. What influences that out? I don't know. Only one guy in there that is seeing things and answering the way he really thinks. He conforms. And then I showed you the eye doctor one where people are standing every time the bell rings. You gotta wonder why people are doing that stuff. These are all social psychology issues. Then there's these things like 35. Worldwide, anti-gay attitudes are most common among men who are less educated. So 35 is telling you that these people who are anti-gay usually are men. For some reason, they're challenged. Always surprised to me if somebody wants to be gay and act a gay lifestyle. What is it to you? They're not coming after you. They're not bothering you. Well, why are you bothered by them? Why do you get 3 of your friends, go in the car, drive down to some gay bar in El Paso, and wait for some guy to leave by himself and then beat him up? Because we're macho men. We don't like gay men. Well, how do you know he's gay? He came out of a gay bar. Hey, guess what? I come out of a gay bar lots of times, and I'm not gay. And I'm not bisexual. I'm there because somebody has invited me. It's a great place to learn about an alternative lifestyle. And unlike a gay who somehow be identified as gay, in a straight bar, they may get treated badly, but a straight guy in a gay bar, actually, anybody in a gay bar doesn't seem to be treated badly. Everybody is treated nicely, at least in the places I've been. "36, Jack is a transgender man, which means the biological woman who's now considers himself a man. Where is he likely to get harassed? Answer: everywhere. B, C, both school and work. I don't see that happen so much on college campuses, but of course I'm not with you guys in social settings. But I teach human sexuality, which a lot is frequently attended by students who are alternative lifestyle. I know that because they either identify it or I sense it because I pay attention. Nobody bothers them in my class, or maybe they say something outside, but I don't think so. I think the more time, and Zimbardo and Milgram would back me up on this, the more time you spend in a diverse community, the more likely you're going to be accepting in that community. Good example is the military. If you come from a family that's prejudiced against black people or Hispanics or whatever, and you join the military, and you live with them, and you work with them, maybe one of them might be your supervisor, then all of a sudden, you start realizing, you know what? Black people are just like white people. Brown people are just like white people. Some are good, some are bad, some are smart, some are stupid. And that's a wonderful revelation, which you might never have heard if you stayed on the farm in Tennessee and had the experience you had there. So reality It's like interracial marriage. I learned about interracial marriages because my father was in the military, which meant I spent time on military bases. So if you were today, go out to Fort Bliss, go shopping at the little mall over there, you will see couples of different races together, holding hands, whatever. A lot more than you're going to see out of some of the malls off base. So the military is a great melting pot. And it teaches people that everybody's human, you're good, you're bad, and every race. So you should treat people not necessarily with their dispositional viewpoint, but what experience you had with them. All right. We only have 2 more mods to go. If you have any questions about that, I'm always available. Now, there are 3 mods in case any of you were not able to pick it up. Otherwise, I'll see you next Tuesday.